Nice. No, yeah, I mean,
It's okay. It's okay. I'm imposing on you. Did you get anything back from the Source Furniture?
International student from Italy. Wow, thank you for coming, Gloria. Great to meet you. Thank you.
I'm the third person from New Jersey on this call, right outside of Philadelphia, and I'm a docent at a Holocaust museum in South Jersey.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming, Carol.
And
hi, Ashley. Hi, Donna.
Hi, I work at a Holocaust Center and I interact with hundreds and hundreds of teachers throughout the year, so I can't wait to bring this to them.
Oh, wow. No pressure then.
I am also from New Jersey. I am, like it was Rebecca that said, from a coastal town in Central Jersey, and I am an early childhood major at Kean.
Fantastic. Welcome. And Matt is dedication. So he's at the gym, doesn't have his camera on, but a big theatre nerd and history major. Nice. Donna, North Carolina, tiny town south of Charlotte. Nice. So we've got a good mix. This is fantastic. I love this. The more people, the better.
Hi, my name is Christina. I actually work for Premier Stages, so I'm coming at this from a performance view.
Fantastic.
Nice to meet you, Christina. Nice to meet you too. Thank you.
Wonderful. Hi, Christina. We're so glad that you're here today. And Premier Stages is co-presenting the program today with us. So
we're excited to be here.
And so I think we're going to, oh, I'm sorry, Sylvia, there's a comment from you.
Hi, Central New Jersey. Hi, Sylvia. Welcome. Thank you for coming, lovely.
And I think we're going to get started. There are still a few people who emailed me that they're running late. So when they arrive, we will let them into the room. But I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And for those of you who I don't know, my name is Adara Goldberg, and I direct the Holocaust Resource Center and Diversity Council at Kean University. It is such a pleasure to see some of our students, our teachers, and our community members here with us today. And without further ado, this is the second time that we've been so lucky to host Dr. Sam Mitschke, who is a Holocaust theater historian and educator, who is located right now just in West London. Correct? Is that right?
Yes, that is right. Yes.
West London. And so we are going to be kind and patient because it is already the evening there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn myself off, but I'm going to recommend that if people have questions during the session, please speak up. Please speak up. We're all friends. We're all colleagues. We're here to learn from one another. And if you'd like, use the chat function. But please, if you're able to do so, please put your camera on. It's nice to see people's faces. And I'm going to hand it over to Sam.
Lovely. Thank you, Adara. So yes, hi everybody, welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for turning out this evening. I know that everybody has busy lives, even more busy because of COVID. So thank you very much for being here. Before I begin, I would like to say thank you to Dr. Goldberg, the lovely Adara, and the Centre and Premier Stages as well for hosting me and for having me and inviting me to talk. This is the subject that I'm very passionate about, is Holocaust theatre as a whole. That's why I did my PhD in it. So I'm hoping to share some of what I know with you this evening. I will be doing a lot of talking. Sorry, but I hope that it will function more as a dialogue, and I want to hear from you. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your opinions, comments, anything that you have to say, because I'm interested and I want to hear it. Before we begin, a little bit of housekeeping. If you would like to talk, please unmute yourself and just pipe up. However, all other times, please make sure that you're muted, because there are a lot of us, and also when you hear yourself echoing back through somebody else's speakers, it's a bit unnerving. Please keep your camera on where you can. I know some people are baking, some people are down the gym, that's fine, but it's nice to see faces. There is zero judgment from me here. If you're doing stuff around the house, I do my writing and I time my writing blocks on how long it takes my focaccia to rise. So there is zero judgment from here. Please note that the session is being recorded. So please don't reveal your deepest, darkest secrets either out loud or in the chat bar, because everyone will know. Also, with regard to the cameras as well, keep them on. However, should a small child wander in, or a partner in a state of undress, or you need to take a phone call, please feel free to turn your camera off quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you. And can everybody see the PowerPoint? Excellent, thank you, Adara, lovely. Okay, so just in case you were wondering what you've let yourself in for, example A. So the session tonight, Nazis, Monsters, Fairy Tales, Holocaust Plays for Younger Audiences. Okay, so here's how I'm hoping the session is going to go. So I'm going to do an introduction, a bit more about me, a bit more about my background. Session aims. I think we've already covered that when everyone was coming in, you know, where you're from, why you're here. It's fantastic. Then the case studies. I'm going to outline, we're going to look at 6 case studies this evening. Don't panic, we're not going to look at them all in detail one by one. Then we're going to consider Holocaust plays in the classroom, thinking about the shoulds and the should nots. How should we work with them? We're going to talk about a concept that I call the green room, which is really important when you're working with students, with the Holocaust, with theatre. We're going to look at problematic plays or potentially problematic plays and what it means when a play about the Holocaust is problematic. How do we work with those? Then we're going to look at the Holocaust Fairytale, which is something that I looked at in the course of my PhD research. So we're going to look a little bit more at that. Then we're going to do a group activity in some breakout rooms, some questions to ask yourself, and we'll be using our case studies in that group activity. And then we'll have a bit of a closing discussion at the end, just so we can get some thoughts, some feedback, any questions, and so forth. Okay. So, a bit about me. So as you can see from the slide, I am a Holocaust theatre historian. I did my PhD in drama and theatre studies with the very catchy title of Empathy Effects Towards an Understanding of Empathy in British and American Holocaust Theatre. I don't have any other languages, so English is the only language that I speak, so that's why the focus is on very much Anglophone theatre. My interests are in the cultural history of theatre about the Holocaust and the use of theatre in Holocaust education. And you can see that some of my research areas, some of the things I've looked at, adaptations of the Diary of Anne Frank, the Nazi persecution of non-Jewish groups, representations of perpetrators, child protagonists, Holocaust cabaret and Holocaust musical, they are things, they do exist, performances about or at Auschwitz, and theatre as a way of exploring contested narratives. That's just some of the research topics that I'm interested in. I also work as an outreach educator for the Holocaust Educational Trust here in the UK. So I go in and I teach the history of the Holocaust to ages 10 plus, so ages 10 to 21, normally with a real focus on the human impact. And as well as that, I also have a job working for the British Refugee Council, and I work with a team providing therapeutic support to separated refugee children in this country. And I'm also currently working with a survivor of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, and I'm helping her to write her memoir of how she survived as a 13-year-old girl. So lots of strings to my bow, lots of things going on. So, the case studies that we're going to look at this evening, I'm not expecting you to remember these, it's just so you know what we've got coming up. Letters to an Alien by Robert Casely, Number the Stars, adapted by Douglas W. Larch from the novel by Lois Lowry, Rescuers Speaking by Wilfred Harrison, Anne Frank and Me by Cherie Bennett, The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, adapted by Angus Jackson from John Boyne's novel of the same name, and A Thing of Beauty which is a short play by Charles Cray. Now, I put this list together and I pulled all my case studies together and then went, only one of these has been written by a woman. So I'm a bit miffed with myself for that, although obviously Number the Stars, the original novel, was written by a woman. So I will be delving back into my Holocaust library, as you can see behind me, and pulling out more plays that are written by women moving forwards. So another thing that I do want to say before I go through Holocaust plays in the classroom and the shoulds. A play cannot teach about the Holocaust. It can inform, it can complement teaching, it can provide a way into the material, new perspectives, new thoughts, a new direction, but what it can't do is stand alone. You cannot teach about the entirety of the Holocaust using one play. And it's important, so important, that it is backed up with sound and thorough history teaching and contextualization. So anyone who knows Number the Stars knows that it is about the Danish rescue of the Jews in their country and how they have basically spirited them all across the water to Sweden. And the Nazis were only able to capture a few. If we don't know the context of how that story is, or what makes that story so amazing, if we don't know about, for example, anti-Semitism in countries like Poland and Germany, and we don't know about collaboration in Vichy France, how can we then teach students using a play and convey to them and express to them properly about how this was out of the ordinary? This was not the given. This was not something, it wasn't, very few examples where the majority of people rose up and said no. So it's really important that you as educators, if you're going to use a Holocaust play, you need to know the history. If you don't know the history well enough, either don't use the play or learn until you do, basically. So, and also tonight, I am not going to be providing all of the answers. You know what works best for your students. You know the age groups that you're working with, you know their personalities, you know their learning styles, you know what works. You know what they will and won't respond to or engage with. So instead, what I'm going to be doing this evening is offering some guidelines, some thoughts, some possibilities. I will be able to suggest further resources, and you'll also be able to contact me after the session, because we simply can't fit everything into 90 minutes. It's as simple as that. So, Holocaust plays in the classroom. A couple of shoulds. Maybe this is really obvious. You would be amazed. Any play that you work with should be suitable for the age group. Things like language, swearing, violence, the narrative. So, for example, if there's anything that might potentially be triggering or more mature or adult themes, is it going to work with them? Like I've said, it should be used to complement the teaching. Speak to your colleagues. Is there the possibility for multidisciplinary work? And I'll go into that a little bit more with the boy in the striped pajamas when we talk about that later. A Holocaust play should be used to create a framework for questions. So you should be using it to get your students to ask why. Why this, how, the whens, the whats, the whos. It should encourage a more nuanced view. Very few areas in the Holocaust, if at all, were black and white. What made somebody choose to collaborate or rescue? What made someone choose to do nothing at all? So challenging conventional modes of thinking, challenging the kind of entrenched ways that the students might be thinking, which comes in to encourage critical thinking. For me, Holocaust education is all about encouraging students to be critical and critically thinking citizens. So some of the questions you might want them to ask about the Holocaust play are what has been fictionalized and why. Which sources have been used? Where have we got this information from? And showing them, you know, that fiction can be used to tell the story, but at the same time, we have to ask really rigorous questions and know why. When you're working with a Holocaust play in the classroom, really strongly encourage you to begin and end with the green room. And I'll come to that in just a moment. And another thing that sounds fairly basic, but can really ruin it. A Holocaust play should be good writing. There are so many bad plays that are just badly written. And I've seen a few and they're horrific and they're really bad. And we will be looking at some examples in a bit. So the green room. Anyone who does theatre here will know it's exactly what it says on the tin. The green room is where performers go before, during and after a performance to relax, to wind down, to share the space. It's kind of the in-between between the dressing room and the stage. So in the context of working with the green room in the classroom, at the beginning, it's a space to set out your guidelines and your rules. So when I'm teaching, I set it up as a safe space to ask questions. And I say, you know, you can ask any questions that you've got because this is a safe space. If you don't know something, you can ask it here without fear of judgment. If there's something you want to know, if there's something you've heard and you're not sure if it's a myth or if it's true, you know, was Hitler's mother Jewish? I hear that one countless times and students want to know. On the back of that, I encourage peer support. And I'm sure you guys do too. One of the things that I always say is, if somebody asks a question that you think is obvious or you already know the answer to, don't laugh at them, because that stops them wanting to ask questions. That stops them wanting to learn. That's how ignorance spreads, and that's when the problems start. So it's that encouragement of a positive learning environment for all of the students, and also no isms or phobias. I make that very clear. I ask if students know what transphobia is, what homophobia is, what anti-Semitism is. And I hear back from them, and sometimes there will be terms that they don't know. Some students don't know what transphobia is, they don't know what xenophobia is. So I will ask for definitions from their peers, and then I will make it explicitly clear that I will not accept at any time any isms or phobias in my classroom, and draw the line. And then at the end, the green room is your space to feedback and decompress. For me, it's really important that students have this. The Holocaust is a heavy subject. It's important to check back in with them. How's everyone feeling? You know, what did you learn? You know, it might be that they like, oh, I didn't know that about, you know, the Danes saved the Jews, for example. I didn't know the boy in the striped pajamas is factually incorrect. We'll come to that shortly. What surprised or challenged you? What were you not expecting? What did you find a bit tricky? What did you enjoy? What did you engage with? What was good about this session? Any general thoughts or questions? And this, you know, for all the educators, for all of you here, it probably sounds so obvious. Sometimes it's easy for us to forget because we know what we're talking about. Sometimes it's difficult to remember and to make sure that the students are okay before they leave the classroom. Does anybody have any, on that note, does anybody have any thoughts or questions for me now before we move on? Unmute yourself or hold your peace.
I really liked your comment about making sure that they don't laugh at other people's questions, because it's true that they no longer want to ask at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there are so many classrooms that I've been in where I say that, and you actually see shoulders start to go down around the room because they've been like, and they're like, oh, actually, this is okay. And also, students love it. Or in my experience, students love it when you say, think of a question that would challenge me. Ask me something that you think maybe I don't know. And then I will, you know, because then they're really thinking and going, oh, okay, what can I come up with? They love a challenge. They love that. And I found it really encourages them to engage even further with the material. Whether because they're trying to catch you out, I don't know. But also it's okay to say, that's a really good question, I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. Because then what that also shows them as well is that there are so many multiple facets to this massive event, and that there are things that people don't know, and it's okay not to know. So again, it's that whole positive learning environment. It's okay not to know, as long as you go and find out. That's just me. So, Holocaust plays in the classroom should not. I realise as I'm reading this, I'm coming across as quite prescriptive, saying they should and should not. I would encourage the shoulds, and I would encourage the should not. So in general, Holocaust plays in the classroom should not reinforce or encourage stereotypes, i.e. Nazis as monsters. Now, I personally disagree with people describing Nazis as evil, because that implies a lack of human agency, and that implies that they were somehow taken over by a higher power, and that people didn't have choices. I very strongly disagree with that. Nazis don't come goose-stepping in wearing uniforms. Nazis move in down the street. You know, Nazis voted Hitler in, and they were teachers, and they were factory workers, and they were lawyers, and they were friends' dads, and next door neighbours, and ordinary people. So for me, any play that sort of encourages this 2D flat Heil Hitlering, goose-stepping, uniformed, screaming in everyone's face Nazi, I personally find problematic. Likewise, anything that reinforces or encourages stereotypes of Jews as passive victims, and that were either unwilling or unable to help themselves. Now, there were situations, yes, where Jewish people were not physically able to help themselves, but it doesn't mean that they sat there and went, oh, okay. That's what I mean by, you know, should not reinforce or encourage stereotypes. Again, this probably sounds really obvious. Holocaust plays should not be factually incorrect unless this is being very carefully explored in class. Coming back to the boy in striped pajamas. I've seen Holocaust plays, that one Holocaust play in particular that was just so appallingly bad, and it was giving incorrect information about the camps. So at one point, Warsaw, capital city of Poland, was described as a concentration camp. So, and this play was put on in public and was sold out most nights. And I was absolutely horrified. I will come back to that. That's another story for another time. Holocaust plays generally shouldn't use an oversimplified treatment of historical events. The Holocaust was, we all know this, Holocaust was so complicated. If you oversimplify it, you don't give students the chance to work things out for themselves and to give them the space to think about it. So for example, plays that imply that, oh, the Allies have come into Europe and the war's over, that's it, great, everyone can go back and go home and pick up their lives as normal. Didn't happen. So again, it's that finding that balance between how do you convey a really grim reality and balance it with the age and, you know, sensibilities of your students. Bit of a balancing act. As I've said before, Holocaust plays should not be used as a standalone or without contextual teaching, and shouldn't be used if you don't have a good foundational knowledge of the context or the historical event. And also, something to really think about, I would say, is they shouldn't be utilised without appropriate support for students who might be triggered by this material. So that's not to say that non-Jewish students wouldn't find a Holocaust play upsetting. but it's about thinking about the demographic within your class and thinking, right, you know, do I need to alert the school counsellor, for example, that I'm going to be doing this? Do I need to give out information as sort of a broadly to the class to say, you know, if any of the things we've discussed today have upset you or affected you in any way, you can come to me, or these are the other people that you can go to, and we're here for you. Not just Jewish students, disabled students, students who belong to the LGBTQIA+ community, and you know, other students as well. But those are just the 3 examples that I wanted to use. So again, making them feel, come back to that whole kind of safe space, making them feel supported, and so they know there's a really rigorous network in place that's going to support them, and keep them safe emotionally, mentally, while they're working with this material. And also it's really important that you guys have the support in place as well, because sometimes we can overlook ourselves and our support needs, and it's important that we're aware of that. So what I would like to do now is, has everyone got your resource packs? Doesn't matter if you haven't printed them, but does everyone have access to them? Yeah, seeing people looking. So what I would like, says she, looking around and realising she's put the play over there. What I would like to do is, if everyone could go to Letters to an Alien. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. There we go. So yeah, Letters to an Alien. Has everybody got that up? And I would encourage you to put your cameras on where you can, please. That'd be amazing. So what I would like 3 volunteers. Go on. I promise I don't bite. Thank you, Kate. Right. We've got Kate, we've got Donna. I need 1 more. Go on. I can't volunteer. I'm reading the stage directions.
Michelle has her hand up.
Michelle has her hand up. Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. Right. So, Kate, I would like you to read Hannah. Donna, I would like you to read Kayak. And Michelle, I would like you to read Krovnik. Okay. We are going to start from the bottom of page 9. So Hannah's speech that begins with, "I hate it here, I hate my parents." Everyone there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm Hannah, correct? You said?
Yes. Right? Yes. Okay. So yeah. So if we, and I will read the stage directions, but let's go straight for Hannah. "I hate it here, I hate my parents." Off we go.
I hate it here. I hate my parents for making me come, and I hate my grandfather for being so strange. I don't understand him. He's so different. He's the kind of Jew everyone makes fun of. He doesn't blend in. I don't want to be like him. I don't want to be a part of his world.
Looking up.
I'll escape. Up there. The Milky Way. Little people with blue skin. No school. No stupid friends. Up there, everyone's different and nobody bothers you.
She speaks into the Game Boy. Hannah begins to play the Game Boy. She remains seated on the stool. The aliens enter and immediately begin milling about the audience, greeting their fellow Philostians with the traditional greeting Zalum, and perhaps a slight incline of the head, clicking together of heels, etc.
Zalum, Zalum.
Kayak and Krovnik move to centre, straightening their uniforms. Very formal, very regimental.
Zalum. Greetings, fellow Philostians. The Bureau of Information welcomes you. Zalum.
Private First Class Krafnik Bali reporting for your duties, sir.
Commander Kayak Alex, 3rd Division, Philostian, Exploratory Unit. Attention!
They click their heels together and pull out kazoos from inside breast pockets. They play a short-lived but rousing rendition of the surprisingly patriotic national Philostian anthem. It warms their hearts. Krovnik sheds a sentimental tear. Kayak nudges her.
Our mission?
To go beyond the boundaries of our world.
To search, pursue, and ponder, examine, and explore.
New life forms, new intelligence, new civilizations.
To learn their ways.
Continued simultaneously.
Learn their ways.
Learn their ways.
Study their
And boldly
customs.
go.
And appreciate them as people. Blah, blah, blah.
And boldly go.
Where no one else would want to.
Big kazoo finish.
Current assignment, Earth.
The year 1994.
A short kazoo blast followed by a moment of reverent silence.
Core, I love my job.
And your job loves you.
Zalum.
Activate scan mode.
They plug in their brain boys.
All systems online.
Accessing.
Krovnik adjusts her brain boy by smacking it again and again. Kayak looks frowningly upon her. He unplugs the brain boy from Krovnik's cranial port. An electronic pop is heard.
Ow!
This is not a toy. This is a highly complex device. Fellow Philostians, note the latest in informational retrieval system, the Comprehendo Brain Boy.
Ooh.
Capable of
Displaying it with pride.
Capable of accessing virtually any data on any subject.
Back to Krovnik.
Not a toy.
The brain boy beeps.
Look lively. There's work to be done. Responsibilities. Deadlines.
Clicks her heels.
Yes, sir. I am looking trace lovely, sir.
She adjusts her brain boy. It issues forth a series of short whistles and peeps.
Fellow Philostians, take note. Our subject.
Krovnik moves up to where Hannah is still playing the video game. She wheels Hannah downstage on the stool. Hannah does not notice.
Interspace transmission received.
Open channel.
Adjusts her brain boy.
Dear alien, my name is Hannah Stern, and I'm miserable. My parents have banished me to my grandfather, Pops. What torture.
I'm not going to ask you to read that out loud because I think that's a little bit too much if you haven't prepped for it already. So we'll just
I appreciate that.
Begin translation mode.
The brain boy beeps.
I hate sitting still while he paints me. I hate this funny accent. I hate his crummy cooking. I hate his stupid songs, moaning about the house that way. Please come and rescue me before I turn into... I just hate being a Jew.
Life form, human.
Check the brain boy.
Plugs in his brain boy, a popping and cracking noise. He adjusts the buttons.
File.
Complete guide to other worldly life forms.
Access code.
R2D2C3PO WD40.
Got it. Hit me.
Krovnik does. Kayak reels.
The letter, Martian.
Don't get nasty.
Don't get smart.
Pointing.
Letter. The letter. What's the letter?
Humans, H.
The brain boy beeps.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 0 in on H.
And we'll stop it there. Thoughts? Tumbleweed.
It's bizarre.
It is. Yes. Anything else? I want to make it really clear as well. Any criticism that I level at a play is always leveled at the work and not the playwright. It's not about them as a person. It's about the work. So yeah, thoughts, comments, questions, anything at all?
Just a sort of initial thought, it was like pretty uncomfortable for me to read certain lines. Like when her line, I hate being a Jew, I am not Jewish. I felt a bit uncomfortable reading that line, and I was just thinking a little bit about my students and reading that out loud and what their feelings might be.
Yeah, really good point. Thank you. Anything else? You're on mute, Carol.
Sorry, I think there might be laughter. In our center, when we bring in high school students for certain plays, when they're uncomfortable with certain lines, there's laughter and they lose the focus of what they're trying to integrate in their thoughts. And this just struck me as one that was maybe a little too humorous given the topic.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I think that Hannah's expressing her distaste at being a Jew at that moment had a lot to do with the way that her pops was putting that to her. And I think that's very relatable. I taught high school for many, many years. And I heard students say the same types of things. Oh, I hate being, I wish you were my mom, or I hate being a Catholic. I taught in a Catholic school. So I thought it was very relatable in a just fed up kind of way.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else? Any other thoughts? Yeah, and Andrea said, I didn't understand the role of the aliens. They were just silly. Yeah, not entirely sure what I just experienced. The aliens were confusing. One of the things when I made myself reread it for this session, you can tell I'm not a fan. And it's just one of the things that I also found slightly disturbing. You know, the fact that they walk around, that the aliens come through the audience, greeting their fellow Philostians, perhaps a slight incline of the head, clicking together of heels. Later, very formal, very regimental. A short-lived but rousing rendition of the surprisingly patriotic national anthem. And I was like, that the fact that they're so formal and that they keep clicking their heels and possibly saluting, and just this emphasis, I was kind of like, is anyone else kind of getting the Nazi undertone from that, or is that just me? And again, for me, a big problem is Nazis as comic creatures as well. Nothing funny about a Nazi, unless you're Mel Brooks doing the producers, I would argue. And also the writing in this is so horrifically stilted. It is so stilted. There's this awful line where she's like, I just want to be a teenager. No teenager I have ever experienced, including myself as a teenager, has ever said, I just want to be a teenager. So, sorry, Robert, would not recommend. So yeah, that's that one. What I would like to do now is go back to the PowerPoint presentation. So again, oh, is this working? Come on, you can do it. There we go. So yeah, problematic plays. With the read through we've just done, on the flip side of that, there are very few examples of the perfect, in air quotes, Holocaust play. Maybe I'm biased, I'm not completely biased. I have found exactly one that for me was the perfect Holocaust play. And it was the Jessica Derlicher and Leon de Winter adaptation of The Diary of Anne Frank, which was just called Anne. For those of you who were at my session last month, well, you know, so you think you know Anne Frank, you know I'm a big fan. But for me, that is the perfect Holocaust play, and just an incredible piece of theatre. The downside being that the full version only exists in Dutch. When it comes to problematic plays or issues to watch out for, like I said, most, if not all, the vast majority of plays will have at least one of these. Stilted, melodramatic, or novelistic writing. If you're reading it out loud and it sounds like you're reading Jane Austen, don't go there, because you're going to lose the students. Just don't do it. Again, a neat and tidy ending. Most plays written for students, or specifically a student audience, will have this neat and tidy ending, which again can be problematic. But again, as long as you acknowledge it and you kind of go, well, actually the rest of the play is actually really, really helpful, and we can address the ending in class discussion, it is what it is. An oversimplified story at one end, or information overload at the other, where the author has obviously done all their work, done all their research, has done everything that they need to know, and then tries to cram the entire thing into the play. Again, brain overload. No one wants a textbook on stage. More serious concerns. Gratuitous violence. Most of the plays that I have encountered that have been written for middle school, lower high students do feature some form of violence. But things like a slap or a pulling of hair, or something, something that kind of makes you go, ooh, but not like, I can't, oh, that's hot, where you have to turn away, and, if it's got gratuitous violence. Historical inaccuracy or distortion speaks for itself. Exaggeration for effect. If they're trying to shock the audience just for the shock value, no. And again, stereotypes through characters or plot, i.e. Jews as passive victims, Nazis as monsters. Some plays will feature all of these. Some might otherwise be okay, but the writing might be a bit stilted. It's a judgment call. It really is a judgment call. However, I would really strongly encourage you that if a play has too many problematic aspects, don't work with it. Do not use it. Bin it. Put it down to experience. Okay, yeah, I read that. It was awful. I'm not using that. The Holocaust Fairytale. Now, this is something that I did research in my PhD for, and I looked at 3 plays in particular, and came up with what I call the 7 precepts of the Holocaust Fairytale. Now, the example that I have, I've sent to you, and it includes a scene, is Number the Stars, which is essentially the epitome of the Holocaust Fairytale. So number 1, it'll have a varying basis in fact or true life events. All plays about the Holocaust do. It'll have one or more child protagonists, often, not always, but often female, and usually aged between sort of about 10 and 14, 10 and 15. The protagonist is typically childlike, and there's this strong sense of innocence or naivety in direct head-on contrast with the impending evil of the story. And I say evil in air quotes, so there's this strong sense that something's coming. The child protagonist will face danger, either the threat of or actual persecution by the Nazis of themselves and or loved ones, and will often take grown-up action, which results in everyone being saved. A side note of that is that other characters may get killed off or disappear, or something may happen to them, but we generally won't see it. And the child protagonist, when they take the grown-up action, they're actually often standing in for the grown-ups. The grown-ups have been incapacitated in some way, so can't do it. So for example, in Number the Stars, Mrs. Johansson is meant to take a packet, mysterious packet, down to the harbour to give to one of the fishermen, to help smuggle some Jews out, and she twists her ankle, so she's unable to go. So Anne-Marie, her daughter, the child protagonist, steps up and says, "It's okay, Mama, I'll go, I'll take it." And she encounters a Nazi on the way. And we go from there. But it's often that this child, who is typically childlike, suddenly in the moment becomes a grown-up and is able to step up to the plate. Precept 5, the suffering of the child protagonist or other characters is rarely shown overtly or explicitly. So, again, questions of taste around, what can you represent on stage? But even things like emotional suffering, or, anything that kind of really looks sort of into the trauma, anything that goes above the sort of the baseline reaction to the events that are going on around them is not gone into. So it's just this almost kind of just never goes below the surface. Which leads into precept 6, the death of another character is usually referred to after the fact, typically once life is back to normal, and not dwelt upon. So again, in Number the Stars, it's awful that they, shot Peter in the town square with everyone watching. Literally less than, I think it's about 2 pages later, the character's younger sister is talking about having pink cupcakes for her birthday. So it's that, for me, that's quite jarring. Oh, he was shot, but it's okay, it's my birthday. And then which leads us into number 7, which Holocaust Fairytale will have a redemptive and or reductive ending. So finding that it's okay, all of this bad stuff happened, but at the end of the day, it's okay, hooray. And again, it's about finding that balance between the reality and what students are able to process, what they're able to cope with, what they're able to handle. We don't want them to leave the classroom seeing life as an insufferable, never-ending pit of death. At the same time, kind of want them to get that sense that just because the camps were liberated, just because the Nazis lost, nobody really won, would be my suggestion, would be my thinking. I don't think we will have time to read through Number the Stars. Let me just check the time. No, we will not. But have a read through, because I've included some pages, an extract from it that I think is most relevant, and again also feeds back in sort of that problematic aspect. Put my teeth back in, try again. Of the slightly stilted writing, and also the character of Ellen. Sort of the Jewish child protagonist in sort of who encounter to Anne-Marie, is unable to speak for herself when challenged by Nazi guards or Nazi soldiers. It's up to Anne-Marie to speak for her. And I find that a little bit problematic. But on the flip side of the coin, that scene also shows that when somebody can't speak for themselves, when they are voiceless, it's up to you to step up and speak for someone who has no voice or will not be heard because they're being oppressed. So, like I say, it can be quite subjective, and it really is a judgment call. Any thoughts, questions, comments, queries? I'm just going to stop sharing the PowerPoint for a minute. Carol, go for it.
At our center for many years, we've collaborated with a local theater group that puts on the musical Number the Stars.
Okay.
But after every single performance during the week, when it's a school group, and on the weekends when it's families in the community, and we aim it towards upper elementary school age, we bring in a survivor to speak to the group, which I think mitigates some of the stilted approach that the play has, because then they get to hear a real story about someone who survived. And our survivor group is dwindling, and we have a great group of 2nd and 3rd gen people who are also coming in. So the impact changes because the group gets to hear these stories and ask a lot of questions, and there are always a ton of questions. So yeah, I think it helps.
Yeah, definitely. And that, that is kind of almost the dream, to be able to go, right, you've seen the play, now speak to someone who this isn't just history, this isn't just a play, this was their lived experience, and you can ask them questions. Yeah, what more could you ask for? Thanks, Carol.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Oh, you're muted. Barbara, you're muted, lovely. Are we able to unmute Barbara?
Barbara, we can't hear you.
You hear me now?
There we go. Yes.
Oh, good. So I was saying that when I was director of the Holocaust Council, when I was Adara's colleague, and schools were doing plays, we would often, if we knew that it was happening, or sometimes the teachers knew, and after a while they did know, they would ask to have a survivor come and speak before, but while the students were learning the play, so that when they were learning the lines and performing it, they already had the real experience. So I would suggest that as a very good way of teaching, having the student before and possibly after as well, but certainly before, having the survivor before for the students, I should say.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Barbara. Yeah, I mean, do you guys want to come over here and like do some stuff over here? Because that sounds amazing. Yeah, and it's about, for me, that is the thing as well, is it's all about the multidisciplinary aspect. And again, double underscore, highlight, big flashing letters, Holocaust play cannot and should not stand alone. That's the one thing I will definitely come out and say. You should always be using it with, contextual teaching, with the history teaching, with survivor testimony, whether that's having a survivor come in or, recording of survivor testimony or second or third gen. Just all about that interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, that whole thing about it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to educate them as well, because the more perspectives that they get, the better it is for them. And also it helps them to understand that there is not one singular narrative of the Holocaust. Gloria, hear a story from a survivor, the best way to understand and learn. Of course it is. Always. Working with HEP, I get to listen to so many survivors and to hear their stories and to bear witness, and to explain to students as well that they are so lucky because they are the last generation who will be able to say, I witnessed someone who was there, who lived this, and about the responsibility of passing that testimony on.
So I want to add, because you mentioned interdisciplinary, that one teacher that I worked with, and she was a master teacher, and she did plays, not just about the Holocaust, but about other genocides as well, with her second and third grade students. And it was remarkable what she was able to teach through the plays. But she also got the other departments involved. So she got the, when they were doing a play about Jesse Owens and the 36 Olympics, she got the physical ed department involved, and she got the music teacher involved to teach them songs about the era that were appropriate for the play. And she got the computer teacher so that they could create the programs. So it really became a very interdisciplinary thing. And the students, and she taught she hardly had any Jewish students some years, or one or two other years. And she would always ask the students to write end of year letters. And the play was always their favorite part of everything that they did.
Well, maybe I'm biased, but I can't say I'm surprised. But yeah, that's because also as well, I think it offers a way into the material, and it's kind of that, not quite a safe space, but it's kind of the space between reality and imagination, where they can step up and they can use empathy. And by that, I don't necessarily mean in the popular understanding as a deeper form of sympathy, but imaginatively and cognitively place themselves in someone else's shoes and look at situations from different perspectives. How do I look at it from Anne Marie's perspective? How do I look at it from her sister's perspective? How do I look at it from her mum's perspective? And also going back to Gloria's comment about hearing a story from a survivor and, you know, that being the best way to understand and learn. The play that immediately comes to mind is And Then They Came for Me, Remembering the World of Anne Frank by James Still. For those of you, I'm seeing some nods, which is great. For those of you who don't know the play, it's about Ava Schloss, so Anne Frank's posthumous stepsister, and Hello, his name has just completely escaped me, Hello Silverberg, it's come back, and their stories in Holland and what happened to them. And it is interspersed with sort of dramatic scenes and play, and you know, traditional theatre as we would call it, and actual recorded testimony from both of them at the same time. So it swaps between the two. So there's that sense of, yes, this is based on a true story and these are their words. So that's one play that I would recommend if you want to look at and sort of blend the two. What I would like to do now, I'm just looking at the time. So unless anybody has any other quick questions, comments, anything at all? No? No.
The only thing that I would add, Sam, while you're setting things up, is, you know, a number of you who are here today are educators within the post-baccalaureate program. And I think, you know, today's workshop just makes the case for the argument that classes on learning about how to teach the Holocaust and prejudice reduction should not be relegated to social studies teachers at the high school level. That everybody needs this training, and the more of us that have this training, that have that foundational knowledge, the better we can work collaboratively within our schools. You know, this idea of having the phys ed teacher, working with the social studies teacher, working with the ELA teacher, is the way that it should be done. And I'm proud, you know, seeing our educators who are here today, who I know are already engaging in this work, and hopefully this will inspire you to continue doing that.
And just allow me to add to that, the involvement of the health department also, usually because that's a
Take PE and health. There's the autonomous stress response that happens in your body when you're experiencing a traumatic incident or a high stress incident, and there's several steps that the brain and the physiology goes through, and that can all tie in with the study of the Holocaust as well. Because as survivors of trauma, these people have had physiological changes to their bodies that then leave a lasting imprint on how they relate in the future. So that's another area that you can involve another discipline.
I think right now I just want to move to the States and come and hang out with you guys, because I'm like, this is all so amazing and you're all talking so much sense. So yeah, I might emigrate. Moving on. So back to the PowerPoint, because we all love PowerPoints because COVID. So what we're going to do now is look at some questions to ask yourself. Don't worry about trying to write these down or memorize them. I will make this available, the PowerPoint presentation available. All I ask is that you don't use it elsewhere or share it without my permission first. But these are just some questions to ask yourself before you work with a Holocaust play. What am I using it to teach about? For example, do I want to teach about Holocaust denial? So I'm going to look at Anne Frank and Me by Sherry Bennett. Am I looking at issues of historical accuracy? So I'm going to use The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Why is this play suitable for my students? So things like, is it age appropriate? Does it deal with it at a level they can understand? What will they learn from it? What will be one key thing that they take away from it? So coming back to what Barbara was saying about, you know, the students looking back and saying the play was the best thing. What's the one thing, if we dig a bit deeper into that, what's the one thing that they take out of that experience? How will it challenge them? How will it stretch them? How will it really get them thinking? How will it engage them? What frameworks are in place around asking questions? So things like, you know, having pads of post-it notes and pens, and if they have a question while somebody is reading, or, you know, reading aloud, they can write it out and then just stick it on the table or stick it somewhere on the wall, and then we'll all address it in the green room at the end. Things like that. What might be the difficulties of working with this text? How can I address or overcome these? So again, things like what language is being used. So for example, Dear Esther by Richard Rashker. Brilliant Holocaust play. Really good Holocaust play. Opens with some really offensive language. So what might be the difficulties of working with that? How can you address it appropriately and say, okay, I'm gonna give, you know, make photocopies of the play to give to all the students, but I'm not gonna work with, you know, we'll take that first page out, or we're gonna keep that first page in, and we're gonna look at language and understand how language can be offensive and it can be hurtful, and how we can unthinkingly, unknowingly use language that oppresses, that dehumanizes, even today, and not be aware of it, and get students thinking about their own behavior in the present moment. Like I said before, what support is in place for students who might be affected by the play? And crucially, what resources and learning will it implement, or will this play be complementing? So things like a survivor talk, or you know, historical accounts, memoirs, you know, further reading, video testimony, other things that other classes that other, you know, if you're working in conjunction with your colleagues. I'm still on that, getting the phys ed department involved for the Jesse Owens play. I think that is stroke of genius. So how does that all tie together? What can you do with that?
I want to make a suggestion.
Go for it.
And that is to use the Shoah Foundation's testimonies, because one teacher who was teaching not as a play but the book Number the Stars was able to get in touch with a survivor of the Danish rescue, and the children were able to have a FaceTime chat with her, and that was extremely effective. And so I think that's a great idea when survivors are not all that available.
Yeah.
Living survivors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. Yes. So, Adara, are you okay to sort out breakout rooms? So we're going to need 6 groups.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So what we're going to do is, let me just check the time, because I don't want anyone to feel rushed. Yes, we have all the time. This is good. So you should have on the top of your resource pack the activity sheet. So we'll outline the activity for you, and it will also have the questions. So what I would like you to do, and I will tell each group which extract you've got in a second. In your groups, read through the play extract provided, preferably out loud. Although I appreciate if you really want to get to it, you just want to skim read, go for it. Start to think about the questions in relation to the extract. Okay, but don't worry if you don't have time to go through all of them. There's a lot there. Maybe just discuss the ones that you feel are the most important, or the ones that jump out at you and go, yes, I want to talk about that one. Discuss your thoughts with the rest of your group, and be prepared to share some of these with everyone else when we all come back together again. Because I want to hear from you guys, and I want to know what you think, and also how it may be that you come up with some things. Go, actually, Sam, you haven't thought about this. Well, what about this for my students? And that's what it's all about. It's about that exchange of knowledge. Okay. So groups 1 and 3 will be doing, you might need to write this down, but I will leave it on the screen. So groups 1 and 3 will be doing rescuers speaking. That is quite long because it is taken from testimony, So don't worry about doing both pages. Just go to the end of where I think the quote is, can anyone remember what an orange is? So just do the first page of that. If you're in group 2, you'll be doing Anne Frank and me. Groups 4 and 6, you'll be doing The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. And group 5, you will be doing A Thing of Beauty. If you're in group 5 and you're doing A Thing of Beauty, what I've done, it's a short play, but what I've done is I've done the first few pages and then the last few pages, because the middle is very wordy. And I felt that it would be better to just have the first bit and the last bit. So again, groups 1 and 3, rescuers speaking, just do the first page to Can Anyone Remember About an Orange? Group 2, Anne Frank and me. Groups 4 and 6, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, everyone's favourite, we will talk about that later. And group 5, A Thing of Beauty. I'm just going to stop the share for 2 seconds just so I can see faces. Is everyone okay with that? Anyone feeling absolutely terrified at the prospect of going into a breakout room and like doing reading and stuff? Oh my God, it's making us do stuff. We all good?
We can do this.
We
Okay.
can do this. Come on.
I'm going to create the group
Okay.
right now. And
You have
go.
10 minutes.
I'm always looking for avenues to like engage with theater and history, because I'm trying to become a history teacher. So I'm actually looking at a way to tie in Angels in America into a queer activism like unit plan. So I think this is like good tools to learn in order to do that.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
if you want, you saying, if you want, you saying about Holocaust themes in fairy tales, if you want your friends to hate you forever, give them a Holocaust reading of Harry Potter and no one will ever speak to you ever again, but it's amazing. Dementors is the SS much?
Yeah.
Azkaban is Auschwitz. Mudbloods, Half-Bloods.
It's funny you should bring that up. I teach a course on Harry Potter and history at our high school, and we have a chapter where we compare a lot of the parts of like Voldemort and the Death Eaters with the Nazis and and Hitler, and we talk about the propaganda that was used and this idea of pure blood.
Yeah. Oh, I'm moving to America because I want to do that session. I want to do that module with Charles, and I want to hang out with Donna, but I just want to hang out with you guys because this is everything about this is amazing. Anyway, so don't worry if you didn't get to read it all. I'm not going to be testing you on it. It's not a pop quiz. It's fine. But what I'm interested to hear from you guys is just, and again, don't have to go around everybody. I may call on you though, because I'm a demon. But again, just some of the things that came up as you were looking at the plays and sort of things that kind of really popped out at you and going, oh yes, this is, if I was going to use this play, these are some of the things I would think about.
I was in group 4 and we had The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. I read the book and seen the movie, so it was interesting to read through like the play version of it. We only got about half of the questions done, but we came to the agreement that this is a perspective of a 9-year-old boy who's the son of like a higher up in the Nazi army. So it's a different perspective than like other stories or other things that we've heard about. Since it's from the viewpoint of a kid, some students might kind of like, oh, like if I was that age, I'd probably process what I'm seeing similarly because, you know, children kind of aren't really aware. The scene that we had was with Bruno and his sister realizing that there's children and people working in the camp nearby and how they're interpreting it, like coming to conclusions, oh, are they people working at a farm, things like that. So it was interesting to see how they grasped it and like understanding, okay, like we're living near people with like wheelbarrows, they look a little odd, they live in like these huts, all this different things that they're realizing. For challenges, we discussed it's very much a historical fiction novel. I discussed this book back in high school during a Holocaust class, There's a lot of inaccuracies in the book. So there's a lot of resources you need to pull to like kind of fact check things. Considering Bruno becomes friends with another like 9-year-old boy inside the camp, usually if they're around that age, they were sent off almost immediately to a gas chamber, which is what we discussed. And I brought up the fact that one of the survivor stories I read, I think it was Eli Wiesel, correct me if I'm wrong, but he lied about his age, which made him like a survivor. He was able to pass through and be a worker instead. So the fact that a 9-year-old boy is working kind of is an inaccuracy. The fact that he's sitting and having a whole conversation, which goes against the camp rules, all that other stuff. And then Bruno easily getting inside of the camp too, when they're usually typically guarded. Another inaccuracy. So there's a lot of fiction throughout the book that would be very, very challenging. And if it's the only resource that they have, they might think it's true. So just making sure they have just like actual knowledge.
Exactly.
Of, like,
so one of the reasons why, because I have read The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, I've seen the film of The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, I've seen the stage adaptation of The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, and I've also seen the ballet of The Boy in the Striped Pajamas.
I didn't even realize there was a ballet for it.
Pardon?
I didn't realize there was a ballet for The Boy in the Striped Pajamas.
Neither did I until I went to see it. That was an experience. But the thing, I'm aware we're running out of time, so what you have said, Rebecca, is exactly right. So we have a generation of school kids here in the UK who was set The Boy in the Striped Pajamas in English by very well-meaning teachers who now think that that was based on historically true fact. So the number of teenage hearts I have broken because I've gone into schools in my role as a Holocaust educator and said, who's seen The Boy in the Striped Pajamas? Me. Who's read it? Me. Who knows it's not true? What? And then having to break it down and having to explain to people or to students that Shmuel would have been gassed upon arrival is not fun. But again, it's a way into the material. I happen to think that the book and the play are incredibly well written and can be used very effectively if you are using them to dissect and kind of go what's historically inaccurate, because you're encouraging the students to look at what is accurate by showing them what's not. So thank you, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Any of the other groups? Anything else that kind of really stood out?
So I was in group 6 and we talked about Boy in the Striped Pajamas also.
Okay.
And I just wanted to point out that I think it's an interesting tool to show students that like how information has changed, like how gathering information has changed. So like the Bruno had no idea what was going on in this camp. Like I physically had no idea, but like comparison to today, we can find out information like this. So like putting somebody into that framework, like having your students understand what it could possibly be in the 1930s or the 1940s is like incredibly important and like a very important tool.
Exactly. And also what Donna said as well, being the son of a Nazi, he would have known all about the Jewish scourge as well. Coming back to sort of interdisciplinary research, I can recommend a book that was published by the Auschwitz Museum, The Private Lives of the Auschwitz SS. And it looks at the families and, you know, from and it actually has testimonies from people who worked as servants for the Auschwitz SS and knew them and knew their families. Anyone else? Doesn't matter if not. I'm just really interested in hearing what you, I mean, I'll be here all night if you let me, so, but.
I'll just say I was in group 1 about what we read. There was about a Dutch couple hiding Jews over a period of time. And there was one part of it where they were saying that everybody was singing really loudly and having a festive time. And I said to the others in my group, I've worked with a lot of survivors who were hidden, and in no way would they ever have done anything to bring attention to themselves where they were hidden because it was too dangerous. So I thought that really did not ring true. People didn't live in houses that were great distances apart generally. So, you know, it was unclear about where they were living exactly, but if they were in an apartment or in a house in a closed city, there was no way they would be singing raucously and doing something like that.
So again, there's that opportunity to unpack it and say to students, so where do we think they are? And also what's really interesting about what you were saying is that Rescuers Speaking is actually drawn from, I think it's 800 testimonies. Yeah, they whittled it down to 100, and it's research done by, I'm probably going to say the names very wrong, but Samuel P. Oliner and Pearl M. Oliner. So they actually established a behavioural institute to establish why, what made people rescue and what made people not. So again, it's really interesting, again, what you were saying, you know, with the survivors, and how it kind of shows that just because it says this in the play, but then when you speak to other survivors who underwent similar experiences or faced similar situations, it was very, very different experiences. So again, showing that there's not one Holocaust narrative. So that's a really good point.
3 also, and one of the people in our group, Martha, she's going in to be a social studies teacher, and she said you could even use that book to explore civics. What does it mean to be a citizen? What is your civil duty? What is your civic duty? And then I added that, especially in light that the government was actually going against what we would consider our civic responsibility. So she said you could bring it into the government, civics and government classroom.
And then also, once you read as well, on the second page, that the husband then talks about, you know, he rescues a German soldier who's been really badly injured in a bombing raid, and he actually saves him, and people are going, why did you save a Nazi? And it's like, well, in that moment he wasn't a Nazi, he was someone who needed my help. So again, that whole, how, you know, so there's so much. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I really love Rescuers Speaking, because it's drawn from testimony, specifically created from, you know, woven together for, you know, there's Dutch, there's Polish, there's even immediately after that extract with the Dutch couple about a German soldier who saves Jews. So again, kind of going, you know, there's so much that you can unpack about why, who is a rescuer and why, and then go all out for it. I'm very aware of the time. So does anybody have, what I'm going to do is one last screen share. I promise this is the last one.
Wait, why don't you speak up and share it?
Did you just say me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you share what you just wrote?
Sure. We were reading Anne Frank and Me, and I was just trying to think through the fact that Bruno and Little Bit, who's featured in Anne Frank and Me, are both these 2 young kids who are not victims, and yet they seem to be the main perspectives of the plays. And I find that to be problematic, because what stories are we trying to tell? Who are we supposed to feel for, right? And I think it's like we're supposed to feel for the main perspectives we're offered, and that's not, I think that's problematic.
Excellent. Yeah, really good point. And I actually haven't made that link between Little Bit and Bruno. So yeah, no, brilliant. And again, something that you can bring to your students and go, let's compare these 2 plays. How are they problematic? And again, it ties in with that idea of denial and ignorance and not knowing. So yeah, really good point. Thank you, Kate. Thank you. So any questions, thoughts, ideas, you can either voice them now, forever hold your peace, or you can stalk me, follow me on Twitter. You can email me, or I also have my new website, which I've now got up and running, and I will be uploading the PowerPoint presentation onto that for you. If you would like to access it, it will be password protected, so you will only be able to see it if you have, you know, graced us with your presence. So the password for that will be monsters, all lowercase, one word, monsters. And I will get that up for you in the next couple of days. So if you keep sort of trying to access it, and I'll get Adara to send out the link, and it's not there, bear with me, I will get it up there for you. I'm going to stop sharing. So yeah, So that is all from me. So thank you very, very much for coming. It has been wonderful. It's been a real pleasure to sit and talk with you all and have a dialogue. And